Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Welcome back, guys. As always, every video goes up on Patreon, and we do several exclusives on Patreon each week as well. And we want to thank everybody for their support over there, as well as everybody that supports us over on Ko-Fi, because we do get also some donations from Ko-Fi. So, again, thank you guys for your support over there, too, as well. We keep going, and we keep trying to expose what's going on, say, at the UN, at all the higher levels of government, because, at the highest levels of government on the planet, are they human? That's the question I think a lot of people are starting to ask, and I think a lot of people already know, and I know you guys get it. The answer is no, they're not. And in fact, there's been many, many encounters with scaly humanoid beings throughout history. And we're going to explore one very, very interesting spot. And no, it's not the UN.
No, it's not the UN, but it's probably has similar sightings and similar things that go on there. Just looks a little bit different. But this guy, he looks okay in his suit and his tie. It kind of blends, and how they use humans and take advantage of humans for humans being humans, because we do have big hearts, and that's something that they use to drive their agendas.
Yeah, and it looks like he's wearing the wreath of Caesar, does it not? The way they got him positioned there. Again, the symbolism is always right in front of us all the time. And there's a reason, again, why in the Bible, for instance, you shall have no more graven images, because we've seen statues like this one discovered all over the world. All over the world, statues that show humanoid-shaped reptilian beings. And sometimes they're with little babies, sometimes they're in a little bit more menacing positions, but they're really actually pretty common. And here we're going to be talking about Hang Son-Dung, which is one of the few unexplored places on Earth when it's not completely explored. And actually, this is a massive, massive cave. It is one of the largest caves on the planet. And it limits the amount of people that can actually go visit it each year. And there's one company that's in charge of who gets to go and who doesn't get to go. What's interesting as well is that it's linked to mysterious sightings of strange reptilian and little gray guys that many of us are very familiar with. According to local residents, the most notable thing about this cave is the strange creatures that are believed to dwell within it. They report seeing reptilian-type humanoid beings emerge from Son-Dung cave, and they believe they actually live deep down inside the cave. Oh, yes. The statues that we see are amazing, as we've shared with them with you guys in the past. There's one in Japan. Literally, it's a reptilian being, not too dissimilar to that. But it's clear he's wearing a shirt. It almost looks like a modern-day shirt with buttons and everything. Bizarre, and it's thousands of years old. This is the cave. Look at the size of this. You could fit a whole Manhattan block inside of it. And the question is, too, how far back does it go? And does it connect to other caves? Apparently so. Oh, there's a lot of interesting things about this, and also beautiful. Look at the size of this canoe in here. And the person, look at the size of the cave. This is just, wow, how I would love to explore this. This would be great, but again, only 1,000 people, they say, are allowed to come in and explore, and of course, you got to get permission. Now, this is Vietnam, too. Vietnam is actually quite fascinating. As we see Ho Chi Minh City, it was, of course, the site of a war from the 60s and the 70s. This war was, and for many people, the first war that obviously seem wrong. There was a lot of questions. Why were we here? Why did this whole thing happen? And when you look at the Vietnamese people, as we've watched, documentaries and shows about Vietnam, it looks like it's thriving at this point in time. The people seem very, very happy, even though they are in a communist country, quote unquote. Again, a lot of that is illusion when you get down to it. And the horror stories that have emerged here from the war itself obviously brings lots of tragedy and also lots of opportunity for very, very dark beings to have a buffet. And we've talked about that too, a louche buffet when you get down to it. I was talking about the energetic component of what is brought about during times of war: extreme fear, extreme anger, extreme hatred, extreme anxiety. All these emotions are being put out there, and yes, there are beings that feed off of these emotions. They literally feed off of them. It is their food, or one of their food sources. This war rolled on for years, and it was truly a many-year-long buffet of louche. And it's interesting that right by that cave, in the same I don't know if they call it counties, parish, or what have you, in the same area, prefecture, I think they say, this also has a famous sighting of reptilian entities during wartime. So it is fascinating. It is fascinating to see this. Many articles have been written about this area, and the cave, gigantic underground cave in Vietnam, could be habitat to an ancient reptilian race all over Asia, especially Southeast Asia, going to India. We find the legends of the Nagas, for instance, which are more snake-like reptilian beings that exist inside the earth and even under deep rivers and lakes and streams, as well as the ocean. The Nagas, they are fascinating, and we've done shows on those really interesting beings by themselves in the past, and we'll revisit that too. That is one of the more bountiful beings that we have so much evidence of, and we have statues galore of Nagas. But there's more than one race of reptilian being, and most of the time the Nagas, again, are thought of having human arms, human head, but long snake-like body. This is something different that we're going to be going into on this video.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the Nagas are something different. You find it in Vedic astrology. You find that race in Vedic astrology, which I find very interesting, and it is tied in a lot to the energetic ways of our own body. It's tied in a lot to Kundalini. It's tied in a lot to people who are very strong-willed in so many ways. So it is curious, but I find this stuff just fascinating. Now that they don't let very many people go there, because of the sightings, I want to go. Put me on the next plane. Rama and Sita have to be able to come with. But I think this is really neat stuff to cover, and it's interesting, and not everyone can be wrong. I mean, the probably thousands upon thousands upon thousands of sightings and people put into writing their story and what they saw. Not every single one is going to be wrong. There is definitely something here. I think the more you come out into the culture, the more it is hidden but still known. It's one of those things you just don't really talk about, one of those little secrets. It's like, oh yeah, reptilians in the government. Well, everybody knows it, but no one talks about it. No one talks about it because we can't prove it in the 3D sense. But I look at our science and I feel that that's just created that way so that it benefits them. So I think this is going a long ways back into our education, into our upbringing, into our culture, for them to stay hidden. It's like they're hidden, weaved in and out of the fabric of our culture, ever so nicely and politely. You cannot see them because of the way we were raised. But if we had different belief systems and different understandings, it would be screaming evident. It would be right there in our faces. But this is something that I think should be covered. It's curious.
Yeah, and the difference is, too, we could have Cindy go in and remote view an incident. And so yesterday when I was researching this, I asked her to feel into something, and she came up with her own unique take on it that others might not, unless they were very, very energy sensitive and could remote view the situation, pick up on. But one thing that I've been doing more of lately is something that I purposely avoided, which was looking at other people's channels, because this feels like what we're at right now is a avalanche of awakening. And we want to speed that along as much as possible, because it feels like we've changed the timeline already. And I don't mean just you and I, all of us, all of us out here that are doing even little things, just even thinking to say one thing that may strike a note of curiosity in some person's mind, to where maybe they do check something out that, it just starts to bother them. Maybe there is some truth to this whole reptilian thing. Maybe David Icke isn't just trying to sell books. This is all we can do, is keep throwing the stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks in the minds of those that have been sleepwalking through life. And, there's so much here. So many great articles are being written by people that are really piecing things together. And it really does make me very happy to see this, especially, coming from the younger generation as well. And here, this is talking about a recent episode of the History Channel's Ancient Aliens has revealed some compelling evidence about the world's largest cave in Vietnam. This cave is, again, relatively unexplored, and it's linked to mysterious sightings of strange reptilian and greys. Again, greys shouldn't surprise anybody. Those poor things, for the most part, are created in labs and don't seem to have any. Again, there's different types of greys, but the ones that are most commonly seen don't seem to have any sort of will of their own. If you're wondering why do we have cattle mutilations, a lot of it is to get genetic material to create more greys, and this is what they do. And in fact, we've encountered a gray that is near us, very near us, and it broke away from a base, and it's starting to self-realize. And it's questioning things, and all it knows is it doesn't want to go back to the military base where it's poked and prodded and tortured and et cetera, et cetera. So, this is fascinating to see. More than 200 meters wide, 150 meters high, and at least 6.5 kilometers long that they know about. And again, I'm sure this, again, because there's restricted access to this. This is something that it wasn't really discovered until 1990. And, again, limited access at this point in time. This is the gentleman, logger, that found it. And it's fascinating, too, because when it was found, they snapped a photo of the cave itself. And this is highlighting one spot in that photo. You see what looks to be a reptilian face in the shadows looking out. Now, is this a legitimate photo of an actual reptilian? I'll leave it up for you guys to share what you feel. Feel into it. feel into it. Even if it is, or even if it isn't, it still doesn't negate the size and scope, and just also when you start to look into the legends of the locals. The devil creatures of Quang Binh. Now, Quang Binh, this is the county, so to speak, that this is in. And here you see glowing reptilians with coats on, looks like military cloaks. But the reality is these beings were sighted. And in fact, there's a really good video here I'm going to link to you guys. This is wartime stories. And it talks about soldiers in Vietnam during the Vietnamese War seeing these lizards, reptilians that walk like men. And I'm just going to scan through this. He does a great job. He tells a good story. I love channels like this. Like when we were on the road all the time, this is the stuff I'd love to put on and just listen to this and zone out while we're driving through hundreds of miles of desert.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it does have a good storyline to it. It feels real. It feels legitimate. It feels, you can tell just the storyline and the energy put into it, that there is definitely a background to this where it did happen. That's what I like about it. Those are the things that I feel for in a story. And, just the things that they mention in here are really make it evident that, this is something that really did happen, and the reactions of the beings and the reactions of the humans. I think this happens more often than we think.
So as you could see, these beings, that a platoon of U.S. soldiers were in an area. They heard rustling. They stopped. They got cover, and they watched because the Viet Cong was in the area. Now, the average Vietnamese person at this point in time and even today is typically maybe 5-6 inches shorter than the average American, so to speak. So, about 5.5 foot is your average male soldier from Vietnam at this point in time. These beings that were glowing with like a yellowish glow were over 7 feet tall. So way bigger. At first, they thought they were wearing some sort of armor or helmets and armor because they looked so unusual. But then when they were able to really focus on them, they could see that they were humanoid, but they were not human. And 4 of them walked right in front of these guys. And they apparently ignored them. Whether they noticed them or not, they ignored them. They had no clothes on. They had no arms, no weapons, so to speak. I should say no armaments. And they weren't carrying anything. They were just walking silently, effortlessly through the woods in such a way, too, that most humans make much more noise than they do. So they were very, very quiet, and they just simply walked by them and went out of sight. Now, the soldiers were all flabbergasted about this, and what ends up happening is they end up starting to hear rustling like it's coming back around to them, and, they start to panic. And then they're running over in a different area, heading towards a river, and boats to get on. And these things are running after them. They've turned, they've circled back around. So maybe they were ignoring the humans, and then they came back around to circle around and approach them from the flank. And so they start to panic and they start to run, and some of them start shooting over their shoulder at just anything. Some clearly hit them, and they say the bullets just bounced off or had no real effect on them. And then what ends up happening is they get to a river area where they're boarding a boat, and they end up moving out of the way And there's a lot of them that are there. As you can see here, we're talking caves. Where did I go there? Okay, let's see if I can. There we go.
Eyes and mouth.
I'll leave it there. This also has a photo of the creature itself, or what's supposed to be the creature there. Very well done video. So none of the soldiers were actually killed by these beings, but it's also very, very interesting to note that there was actually a lot of them there, and they watched them. They watched the soldiers move away from the area in their boats. When I asked Cindy about these beings and what does she pick up on them, she was saying that what she gets is, yes, these are also soldiers.
Right. They also have a very military-like vibe to them. They have different types of feelers than we do, so they know when to respond, when not to respond. They know when to ignore. They have this mind reading ability that is like no other. It's absolutely insane the way they read people's minds. So they communicate back and forth to each other very much like our animals communicate. So they have that. To me, it's an advantage. It's an advantage over the human soldiers, because they're used to having to communicate verbally to get their information across and their next move. When you see these glow-in-the-dark creatures walking past the soldiers in the forest the first time, they were acting like they were completely ignoring them, but these creatures knew that they were there, but they were also communicating to each other, communicating to themselves, okay, we're going to go about this in a different way. They don't need the equipment. They don't need any of that. So they're also very well trained. They keep in the background. They keep quiet. They have their own civilization. They have their own architecture. They have their own structure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something where, again, one story, one encounter, that's one thing. But when you have, again, statues that are thousands of years old, identical in both Mesoamerica, like in Mexico, Central America, and over in the Middle East, these statues are depicting the exact same creatures. Yeah, no, there's way too much here. Even the Bible talks about, these entities that we just so, call Satan and Lucifer and the devil and stuff without going into anything else, without giving any real details, without really, or just leaving it at that misnomer, it's a fallen angel, when the Hebrew word really means messenger. It's not talking about a non-physical being in that particular verbiage. These misnomers lead to all sorts of misillumination, disillumination, disinformation. And this is exactly what's intended by giving us these mindsets in the first place.
Well, I remember there was one thing that's stated in the Bible where I think it was Paul, where they talk about how the scales fell from his eyes. I mean, that just stuck out to me. It's like, okay, we're not dealing with a human thing here.
No, I mean, I personally have witnessed people's eyes change. I've witnessed faces morph in person. So, again, this is something that's been part of our culture that we totally understood. And here we're talking about Vietnam. Again, also, I want to just reiterate, this poor country suffered brutally for a period of, if my history is right, I want to say 8 or 9 years. These people are so nice in general. Very, very peaceful people. We all can get along. We'd have no problem getting along if we weren't constantly being pitted against each other. And this especially hits me and really kind of gets to me when I know they're doing this again now And whether it's in a month, whether it's in 3 months or whatever, whenever they decide to trigger that bigger expansion in the war, and I do think they're having problems with that. I think that's part of the delay, is that they are in damage control, and things are unraveling very quickly. And I'm starting to kind of hold out hope that we can even maybe somehow avert that big third WW, make it a big dud, and get these dark, scaly beings out of the control and out into the front pages everywhere. Look, humanity, wouldn't that be great? Reptilians exposed, humanity has been played the whole time. I would love to wake up and see that in the headlines. And then we really could start to absolutely plan our futures in the way that we want to as individuals. Because again, this whole matrix is not created in a one-size-fits-all manner. It's all about your unique consciousness and what do you want to explore. Meanwhile, the dark matrix within the matrix, that's all about its agenda only.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very selfish, and it's very one-sided, and it's very, it is more of a one-size-fits-all. You have to fit in certain brackets, and if you don't fit in certain brackets, then, well, there's going to be some sort of consequence, and I don't like that. We're very individual, and when we work on people and talk to people, we take into account their particular individuality as it should, very, very naturally. I think ego is overblown, and I think ego gets thrown around constantly, and people are pitted against each other, and they're made to feel horrible about each other, because you don't look like this or you don't look like that, that means that you are less than. And it's really pushed in this culture in a huge, huge way. And we are all very special. We are all very unique. We are all very beautiful in our own way. And that is the celebration in and of itself. Go deeper. Go deeper. Don't just go to the face part of things. That's where I think we're getting hung up and we're getting stuck, because it's natural to look at something and say, oh, that's beautiful. But we need to be in a place where we look at everything and say, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like if you look at Vietnam today, and there was a phrase when we were growing up, when we were kids, that used to say, better dead than red. Do you guys remember that? That was something that I heard in the 70s and 80s a lot. And that was that mindset. But the reality is, again, no system is truly free. It's all the control system. When you look at Vietnam today, it's actually very clean, very up-to-date, very modern. And you got to say, how different is it than if our side, the U.S. side, won? Because the U.S. side didn't win. The communists won. And what does Vietnam look like today compared to it would have looked like if, say, the U.S. had won? Now, this is all part of a script to a high degree. I do think, that the main purpose of these forays, when you look at a war like the Vietnam War, what was really the purpose? Stop the communist advance, again. But the reality is, no, I think it's war in and of itself. It's the profits made by war. It's the loosh that's created in the war. It's the scarring of the human soul by the war, and the hope that they can keep people trapped in a lower frequency. These things are really the purpose of the wars. So they contrive these wars. They contrive these wars. These wars are created. They are manufactured. The average person doesn't want this, and this is, again, an area of very, very dense jungle. There's a lot of areas in here that really haven't been explored. But what it did was provide, 8 years, if that's My thinking was 65 to 73, and I might be off a little bit there. But 8 years of profits for the military-industrial complex, 8 years of loosh for these demonic entities that some know as jinn. And also, there were many reports in Vietnam of different soldiers that were seeing all sorts of demonic entities on the battlefield and around the battlefields, which again often were swamps and jungles and places that people don't really go to often, or if they go, they just pass through. They don't necessarily live there. Or you had small villages where people were living very, very subsistence life, very, very primitive life. And now what happens is, again, you have these mega cities, the condensing of humanity into the cities with the frequencies where they can be controlled. And you're moving people away from nature where their senses are heightened and into a zone that has all the frequencies that deaden the senses and create more of that zombified scope of things. So lots of purposes here. These entities are very real, whether this was one mass hallucination. Well, I'll leave it up to you guys. I look forward to your comments. But again, we like to give these events, these myths, these legends, these urban legends, what have you, with the scope of the geopolitics of the day and what's really behind all this.
Indeed, what's really behind all this?
Well, it's not love, and love is what you see with these kiddies. Again, the way to get up into the higher frequencies is through exactly what all the ascended masters, including Yeshua, Jesus, taught, and that's about compassion, that's about caring, that's about turning the other cheek, so to speak, and not the eye for an eye. Understanding that we've all been manipulated, and there's a lot of healing to do on the planet.
Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.